Hello, my name is John Botros. I'm River Access Coordinator in the Inland Fisheries Division at the Texas Parks and Wildlife Department. It is a pleasure to be here, and today I'll be presenting about river access initiatives at TPWD. At TPWD, we value our partnerships with both private and public entities for expanded access to Texas rivers. First, a slide about the Inland Fisheries Division. In the IF Division is responsible for managing and conserving the state's freshwater fisheries, fish, and the aquatic fauna, as well as their habitats. Water bodies include hundreds of reservoirs, lakes, and ponds, and thousands of miles of rivers and streams. These resources are used by about 1.2 million anglers over the age of 16. Fishing activities benefit the Texas economy through an estimated $960 million per year in direct spending on food, lodging, transportation, and equipment. Since I work for the Inland Fisheries Division, this talk will be heavily fish-centric, but I hope to highlight TPWD's river access initiatives today and give you a better idea of the work we've been doing to improve river access, as well as what we've learned. Texas's waterways. You can see here that most of our waterways are on the east side of the state, and there's not a lot of water out here out west. But don't be mistaken by the simplicity of this map. Everything is bigger in Texas. Within our borders, we have 1.7 million surface acres of freshwater, including 191,000 miles of rivers, streams, and creeks. This ranks third nationally overall for stream miles, and of that total, we have 40,000 miles of perennial streams, which ranks 11th nationally. Texas's landscape is over 95% held in private ownership. The rivers, however, are public domain. As our population increases, demand for river access continues to increase as well. The scale of private ownership in this state presents both challenges and opportunities to expand access to our rivers. The Outdoor Industry Association reports a 200% increase in the number of Americans participating in kayaking between 2006 and 2012, with a third of nation's kayakers located in the southern U.S. In 2018, almost 23 million Americans, or 7.6% of the U.S. population, took to rivers, lakes, and oceans to participate in at least one paddling activity. For the next few minutes, I'd like to highlight the River Access and Conservation Areas Program, or RACA. RACA works with streamside landowners to allow for public river access for fishing and paddling uses. This is an example of our signage and a young angler bank fishing at one of our sites. The RACA program started in 2014 with leased access sites on the Guadalupe Tail Race for the winter trout season, which runs between December and March of each year as the model. Now, up to 22 sites across the state on 9 different rivers. Most of these sites are open year-round, and these sites provide new or improved access to over 300 river miles. We have also conducted access or habitat conservation projects at 10 of these sites. You can find a map like this, which is interactive on the web at this URL, and it'll give you information on sites and who to contact to gain access. The RACA program has been funded by multiple sources over the years. Through the Wildlife and Sportfish Restoration Program, TPWD receives funding to administer the Boating Access Grant Program, or BAG. BAG provides grant assistance at a 3-to-1 match to construct new or renovate existing public boat ramps that provide access to public waters for recreational boating. Funding for RACA was a new idea for the BAG program and was met with considerable resistance, but eventually RACA qualified for financial support to work with private landowners for improving river access. Next, the Voluntary Public Access and Habitat Incentive Program, or VPA-HIP, provides funding to states and tribal governments to encourage landowners to allow public access to their land for hunting, fishing, and other wildlife-dependent recreation. This is by far the largest pot of money that we've been able to leverage into multiple access agreements with landowners. Third, launched in 2017, Funds generated from the Texas Rivers Conservation License Plate are used to support projects that enhance access, control invasive species, and restore fish habitats in river settings. Lastly, private dollars from the Parks and Wildlife Foundation have also been used to fund access projects. We look for sites that offer a unique wilderness setting with intact habitats, river segments that offer high-quality paddling and river fishing experiences, or other nature-oriented uses such as wildlife viewing are sought after. Areas that are currently limited for public access, or sites that are strategically positioned to connect with other river access areas are highly sought after. We want these sites available to lots of people, so locating them near urban areas is also a benefit. What if a property needs improvement? TPWD can provide financial assistance to landowners who open their property for public use. Such things as fencing, gates, road base for parking areas or access trails, or materials for other improvements to ease access can be purchased under contract. TPWD also prepares recommendations to the landowner for best management practices to encourage sustainable recreational use or to improve habitat conditions. Important to note here, if funding for any ground disturbing activity is paid through BPA HIP, a cultural resources review is required beforehand. How does the access payment work? TPWD and the landowner negotiate a term of lease, usually 1 to 3 years, and payment is informed by a scoring matrix. TPD makes quarterly payments to the landowner over the term of the contract. Can a landowner still regulate the use of their property? Yes, the types of recreation allowed are generally fishing and paddling, and special conditions for public uses are specified on each site's webpage and conveyed to visiting guests. How is sustainability maintained at the access lease sites? TPWD will conduct scientific surveys to monitor fish populations, stream bank vegetation, and public use of the access areas. Surveys will occur at the beginning, midpoint, and renegotiation phases of each contract term. Survey data is used to ensure that increased public use does not have an adverse impact on our natural resources. What about liability? The recreational use statute limits the liability of not only the state, but also the liability of others who open their land for recreational purposes. A sign like this must be posted or a waiver signed by each guest visiting the property. RACA also works with partnering landowners to set up demonstration areas to show sustainable streamside land management. Examples include native riparian plantings, seed dispersal, access improvements or creating targeted access points, interpretive signage, or river cleanup events. This is an example of an access improvement project at one of our RACA sites. The access trail was eroding, as seen in the lower left, so a bridge was constructed and installed, and the erosion area was filled with cactus pads, rocks, and brush to slow down water and to help ground cover regrowth. Finally, the bridge was load tested with the heaviest stuff that we could find that day, as you can see in the lower right. Next, I'd like to highlight the Texas Paddling Trails program. This program is based on partnerships between state and local governments or other community leadership. The Texas Paddling Trails are established at public access points like local riverside parks, and these paddleways have been vetted by TPWD for family friendliness and safety. Due to the number of growing paddlers and agencies' interest in increasing angler and boating access to public waterways, the Texas Paddling Trails program was launched in 2006 with these goals. The community partnership model we use for these trails has yielded benefits for communities, paddlers, and our agency alike. We work with all kinds of community partners for these trails. Some examples you can see here are convention or visitor bureaus, chambers of commerce, local river groups and liveries, TxDOT, river authorities, and much more. All trails must meet some basic criteria, taking the mystery out of paddling for skilled and new paddlers alike. Trail segment distance is usually 4 to 12 miles and offer paddlers either a half-day or a whole day paddling experience. To date, no trails have been launched that require overnight camping. Adequate parking and existing access points need to be identified by the community partner. Other attractions or points of interest nearby is a plus. The paddleway must be navigable, and it helps again if it's near a population center. The paddling trail program has its origins on the coast. Before we had an actual program, 7 coastal trails were identified and marked with trail signage, as you can see in the top right. The Luling Trail, located on the San Marcos River, was the first inland trail that we launched, and it marked the 8th trail in our network. Now, 17 years later, we're up to a grand total of 78 officially certified Texas paddling trails. This network offers 141 access sites, over 400 GPS coordinates for markers or points of interest, and over 642 miles of paddling trails. It's important to note that the Texas Paddling Trails program does not fund improvements. New public access sites for paddlers are the community's responsibility to develop and maintain. TPWD simply provides community assistance to help determine the best locations, like this one in Victoria, which was a vertical lift for kayakers before. Now it has a great, easy-to-use access ramp. Improvements to access also lead to better maintenance of sites overall by the community partners, additional site improvements, and increased visibility for the use of land and water. TPWD helps with the promotion of the paddling trails. We design kiosk panels and individual web pages for each trail with maps, rental information, and more. We also produce regular ads and articles in the Texas Parks and Wildlife magazine and occasionally in the Texas Monthly about the Texas Paddling Trails program. Finally, when it comes time to launching a trail, we work with the community partner on launch events, which includes a ribbon cutting and a presentation about the new trail in the system. Now I'd like to highlight some specific sites and some things we've learned from providing better access. In West Texas, we have the Devils River. This is a very remote, rugged, and absolutely beautiful river system. In fact, many people consider it the most pristine intact river system in the United States. The Devils, from Baker's Crossing to the South State Natural Area, is about 30 miles of river very sought after by paddlers and anglers alike. Before RACA partnered with a landowner on the west side of the river to establish 2 paddle-up campsites, shown by these 2 black triangles here and here, paddlers were trying to take on more river than they can handle in one day, sometimes floating through the night trying to reach feasible campsites. Paddling on the Devils River at night almost always resulted in boats flipping over and folks losing gear and other items in the river. By adding these access locations on the Devils, paddlers benefited by having known locations to stop and camp, but also these access areas have benefited other landowners by minimizing trespassing issues and littering in the river. Here are some photos of the Devils River. It's just a blue, clear desert stream. As you can see here, lots of good smallmouth and largemouth bass fishing opportunities. In the lower center, we have Dolan Falls and some other canyon-esque features of the river. Next, I'd like to highlight the Llano River. This is located in central Texas on the Edwards Plateau. shown here and here. The South Llano River is a tributary of the Llano. Renowned for its Guadalupe bass fishery, it is also a very popular paddling destination. We have a state park on the South Llano, which is one of the busiest in the state. Paddlers would try to paddle from the 377 crossing to the state park, often finding themselves unable to make it in one day and trespassing on private property to get off the water. So we added 2 RACA sites at County Road 150, really to improve the parking and to provide new access points to make the paddling length more manageable. Again, the result was less trespassing and less litter in the river. Here's a photo of the South Llano and a beautiful Guadalupe bass. On the middle section of the Llano River, we added 3 RACA sites at Mazoland Road, at Castell, and at County Road 103 to establish a network of access areas all separated by about 5 to 6 river miles. Again, similar theme here, it was the segment with limited access, and parking at some of these low water crossings was outright dangerous. So, working with 3 different landowners, we were able to improve the parking areas and access to the river, opening up over 20 miles of the middle Llano for paddling and fishing opportunity. Here again is the beautiful Llano River and a Guadalupe bass. Again, Guadalupe, Llano River. In early spring, the white bass congregate in the upper reaches of the reservoirs, waiting for spring pulses to come into the reservoirs and the bass run upstream to spawn. Access sites on the Sabine, Neches, Brazos, and Llano rivers for this white bass fishery were established to access this fishery. White bass fishery generates $2.8 million in economic value seasonally. White bass typically start to run around mid-February in the eastern half of the state, which is typically wetter. And in central Texas, white bass often run a bit later with good spring rains around mid-March. Typically, the season lasts until early May. Here's the Brazos River, the middle Brazos, below Lake Whitney. Again, it's a segment with not a lot of access and with a good known fishery. The fishery is known for largemouth, smallmouth, and striped bass, but access was very limited. Again, so we partnered with landowners at the 2114 crossing and near Golston to provide more manageable river segments for paddlers to enjoy. Benefits of improved access. We have found that improved access improves mental health and helps lower stress levels because anglers and paddlers have known put in and takeout locations, again, taking the mystery out of some of these locations. We have found that better access lessens trespassing issues, connects the public with nature, and promotes environmental stewardship. Other things is it helps minimize littering, and fishing is a common crossover activity, which essentially sells more fishing licenses. Well, that's the end of my talk. If y'all have any questions, please reach out to my contact information is on this slide. I also have some websites that offer some good information about these access locations, access programs. Thank you.